The night I saw my wife sitting close to another man, with her head resting on his shoulder, I felt like the entire world had stopped moving. The restaurant was filled with laughter, music, and conversations, but all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat. I had walked in expecting to surprise my wife after her long workday, but instead, I found a scene I never imagined. She wasn't just talking to him. She looked comfortable, safe, and emotionally connected. For a moment, anger rushed through my veins, but something inside me told me not to react. I stood there quietly, watching from a distance as my wife smiled at him in a way I hadn't seen in months. The man sitting beside her was someone I recognized from her workplace. His hand rested near hers on the table, and their conversation looked far too personal. My first instinct was to walk over and demand answers, but I stopped myself. I remembered every promise we had made, every struggle we had survived, and every reason I had trusted her. Instead of creating a scene, I quietly turned around and left. On my way home, my mind was fighting a battle between my heart and my thoughts. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. I wanted to believe that what I saw was not what it looked like. But every memory from the past few weeks started connecting like missing pieces of a puzzle. The late nights at work, the sudden changes in her phone habits, and the emotional distance between us were no longer random things. They were signs I had ignored because I loved her too much to suspect her. When I reached home, I didn't say anything about what I had seen. My wife arrived almost an hour later, acting completely normal. She smiled, asked me about my day, and started preparing dinner as if nothing had happened. I watched her carefully, searching for guilt in her eyes, but she showed nothing. That silence hurt more than any confession could have. She had no idea that I knew something had changed. She had no idea that the husband standing in front of her was no longer the same man who left the house that morning. The next few days, I became quieter than usual. I didn't argue, I didn't accuse her, and I didn't ask questions. My wife noticed a change and kept asking if something was wrong. I simply told her that I was tired, but the truth was, I was observing everything. I wanted to understand whether that night was a mistake or whether it was part of something bigger. Every small action revealed more than words ever could. The way she protected her phone, the way she smiled at certain messages, and the way she avoided emotional conversations slowly broke the trust one had built for years. I decided not to confront her without knowing the complete truth. I didn't want to fight based on assumptions. I wanted facts. So I started paying attention to details I had previously ignored. One evening, while she was taking a shower, her phone lit up on the table. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but the name appearing on the screen made my heart sink. It was the same man from the restaurant. The message was simple, but it confirmed my worst fear. It said, "I missed the way things were between us." I felt a painful silence inside me after reading those words. It wasn't just about that moment in the restaurant anymore. There was history between them, something I knew nothing about. I placed the phone back exactly where it was and waited. When my wife came out, she looked at me and smiled, unaware that I had discovered the truth. That night, I realized that sometimes the deepest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the person who promised to protect your heart. The following morning, I made a decision that surprised even me. I stopped trying to win back someone who had already emotionally walked away. Instead, I focused on myself. I went to work, handled my responsibilities, and started rebuilding the confidence I had lost. My wife noticed that I was different. She expected anger, jealousy, and confrontation, but she received calmness. My silence confused her because she was waiting for a reaction. She didn't understand that my silence was not weakness. It was me preparing for the moment when the truth would finally come out. A few days later, my wife finally asked me what was happening. She sat across from me and said, "You haven't been yourself lately. Did I do something wrong?" Her question almost made me laugh because she already knew the answer. I looked at her and realized that the woman sitting in front of me was someone I loved deeply, but also someone who had hidden a part of herself from me. I calmly told her that I had been thinking about our marriage and about the distance that had grown between us. She became nervous, but still tried to avoid the truth. I didn't mention the restaurant immediately. I wanted to see if she would be honest on her own. I asked her if there was anyone else in her life who had become more important than our relationship. Her face changed instantly. For a few seconds, she remained silent, and that silence told me more than any answer could. She looked away and started explaining that it wasn't what I thought. She said they were just friends and that I was misunderstanding the situation. But deep inside, I knew that excuses could never repair broken trust. I finally told her about that night. I told her exactly what I saw, her sitting close to him, her head on his shoulder, and the way they looked at each other. Her expression changed from confusion to fear. She tried to explain everything, saying she was going through a difficult time and that she found comfort in someone who listened to her. But I asked the one question she couldn't answer easily: why did you hide it from me if it was innocent? The room became completely silent. For the first time in years, I saw tears in her eyes. She admitted that she had allowed herself to become emotionally attached to another person. She said she never planned for things to go this far, but she had created a connection outside our marriage that should never have existed. Hearing those words felt like losing someone who was still standing right in front of me. I wasn't just hurt because of another man. I was hurt because the person I trusted most had chosen secrecy instead of honesty. I thought about all the sacrifices we had made together, the small apartment we started in, the difficult years when we supported each other, and the dreams we built as a team. I wonder how something so strong could become so fragile. But then I realized that love alone cannot hold a relationship together. Trust, respect, and honesty are the foundation. Without them, even the strongest bond can slowly fall apart without anyone noticing. Instead of shouting or insulting her, I calmly told her that I needed time to decide what I wanted. She expected a dramatic reaction, but my calmness affected her more than anger would have. I packed a few things and stayed with a close friend for some time. During those days away, I finally had space to think about my future. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was trying to understand whether the person I loved still existed behind the betrayal. Weeks passed, and my wife tried to reach out. She apologized repeatedly and said she wanted to fix everything. She ended all contact with that man and admitted that she had made a terrible mistake. But some wounds cannot disappear with a simple apology. I listened to her words, but I also listened to my own heart. Forgiveness and trust were two different things. I could forgive someone without forgetting what happened. Eventually, we decided to have one final honest conversation. There was no anger, no accusations, and no pretending. We talked about everything we had ignored for years. We realized that problems in our marriage had been growing quietly while both of us were too busy to notice. Her mistake was a choice, but our broken communication had created a space where problems remained hidden. We both had to accept the truth if there was any chance of moving forward. Months later, my life looked completely different. Whether our marriage survived or not, one thing changed forever. I learned my own worth. I learned that loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. I learned that silence can sometimes reveal more than confrontation. That night, when I saw my wife resting her head on another man's shoulder, I thought my life was ending. But in reality, it was the moment I started seeing the truth clearly. Today, whenever I think about that night, I don't remember the anger anymore. I remember the lesson. Betrayal can break your heart, but it can also show you your strength. I didn't fight that night because I knew anger would not change anything. My silence forced the truth to come out, and that truth gave me the power to choose my own future. Sometimes the biggest victory is not defeating someone who hurt you. It is finding yourself again after they tried to break you.